Thank you for joining us for today's Ipsos Solutions webinar series. Throughout today's session, you will remain in listen-only mode. However, throughout the webinar, please submit your questions online using the Q&A feature. Time permitting, we'll answer questions at the end of today's session. However, if time runs short, then your question will be answered by email. Today's session is also being recorded and will be directly emailed to you. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome today's first speaker, Heather Carruthers, U.S. President of Ipsos's Qualitative Research Practice. Heather, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and for all of you who have joined us today. Welcome to this timely exploration of storytelling's enduring power. If you logged in early, you may have scanned this QR code to see your very own storytelling superpower using our Syncytium motivational model. And if not, I wanted to give you the chance to do this quick scan. We will reference the model later in the panel. And before we get started, I wanted to just acknowledge a few things. Right now, our world is moving so fast. And with that comes increased demands on your time and decision making. Across industries, you and your colleagues are being challenged to adapt and grow more efficiently than ever before. And as your business partner, we have a whole suite of solutions that are designed to help you navigate these strategic challenges, develop better products, craft meaningful campaigns, build your brand loyalty, and memorable experiences. We have world-class talent and cutting-edge technology in Ipsos powered by the best of human and artificial intelligence. In fact, the Grit Green Book report named us the world's #1 most innovative research company, and thank you because you all helped put us there. So today is the fourth in a series of webinars that Ipsos is offering for solutions that meet your evolving demands. Today is all about storytelling in the age of AI and the need for persuasive, powerful human stories to help you make the most informed business decisions. So let's start with a little bit about storytelling and why it's important. The human brain is hardwired for stories. It's how we've evolved to process information over time. And importantly, storytelling is one of the most important ways we humanize data. In fact, storytelling and stories are 22 times more memorable than facts alone. And even more important, stories trigger empathy and emotion, and that's what drives action. So our qualitative insights team can help you weave together the story with data to be more persuasive and move people to action. Okay, now let's shift to storytelling in the age of AI and how that's evolved. In today's rapidly evolving digital landscape, AI is increasingly shaping how we create and consume narratives, and understanding the human element has never been more critical. So we're here today with a panel of experts to delve into the value of human-centered storytelling, its ability to foster empathy, and its undeniable impact on business decisions. So storytelling at its core is about connecting with the human experience. It's about understanding motivations, aspirations, and even anxieties. This type of understanding is what fuels empathy and allows us to create narratives that resonate really deeply with our audience, whether that's a consumer, a B2B customer, patient, provider, colleague, or your own community. In the business world, this translates into more effective marketing campaigns, better product innovation, stronger brand loyalty, and ultimately more impactful outcomes for you. However, the rise of AI also presents exciting opportunities and significant challenges to the art of storytelling, and that's why we're here today. So while AI can augment our creative processes, generate ideas, and personalize narratives, in some cases even craft entire stories, we must be mindful of the potential pitfalls. So how do we ensure that AI remains a tool that enhances rather than replaces human creativity? How do we maintain authenticity and emotional depth that makes stories truly compelling? And most importantly, how do we keep the human at the center in a world that's increasingly driven by algorithms? These are just some of the questions we'll be exploring today with our panel of qualitative experts as we unravel the complex interplay between the human experience, AI's transformative potential, and the future of storytelling. So I'm thrilled to be here with some of our best and brightest colleagues, an ethnographer, an innovator, and one of our strategists at Ipsos. Here are the few things that we'll be talking about today. We structured the panel in 3 sections, and I'd ask that everybody maybe come on camera. 3 sections. Big change starts with a small story, human stories in the age of AI, and storytelling for business impact. So with that, I'd love to introduce our panel, and I am going to stop sharing and ask that everybody come on screen and join me.
Okay.
Can everybody see panelists? All right, hello ladies. So I would love for our panelists to give us a quick introduction, who you are and what you do, and then what is your storytelling superpower using that Sensidium framework that I referenced.
So hi everybody, I'm Tessa. I'm a VP on the Ethnography Center of Excellence team. We're a specialized team of anthropologists, social scientists, filmmakers, market researchers. We're devoted to understanding culture and the human experience. So I'm one of those people who think that they have the absolute best job. And my storytelling superpower is explorer. With expert and empathizer wings, if you look at the full set, and I think if you put that on my grave, I'd be happy.
Yeah, and hi, I'm Karen. I'll go ahead. So I work in innovation in qualitative here at Ipsos, and before that I was on the client side. And my storytelling superpower, according to the Sensidium framework, is the green one, which is expert. And that means that I'm constantly looking for ways to do things differently and better, which I think is appropriate for my job and my role in today's webinar.
Awesome, Amanda, how about you?
Sure, thank you. So I am a qualitative strategist and moderator at Ipsos. So I spend the majority of my time talking to consumers and primarily in the CPG realm. So maybe not surprisingly, my Sensidium superpower is empathizer, which is all about connecting to people. It's making them feel a sense of belonging, which makes sense given my role and love for storytelling.
Awesome, ladies. I think it's helpful to know a little bit about your backgrounds. I think this will help as you tell your stories of impact that you have to share today. So let's start with our first topic, which is big change can start with a small story. You know, we know that this is true, and all of you have had experience in this space. So Tessa, I'd love to start with you because I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the game-changing work that you did with Amazon.
So this is a story about a story of increasing the median household income in the US by 5%. And so anyone who has been in the workforce working for an hourly wage or who has heard debates over the federal minimum wage, you may know that it was last updated in 2009 to $7.25. Amazon, who is the second largest private retailer in the US, has long been an advocate for a 15-hour minimum wage since increasing their own to $15 an hour in 2018. So there's a lot of debate about raising the national minimum wage, but Amazon knew, in fact, that there is a lot of support for raising the national minimum wage and understood the impact that this increase would make on American households. And so they came to Ipsos to us in 2021 wanting to reveal the national support for an increased minimum hourly wage on a federal level. We knew that the quantitative data was there. We knew that we'd have the big headlines of how the majority of Americans support it. But we know also from the history of the debate that there's still, we needed more to be able to drive that message home, to be able to help people feel it and move past the fact of it and into more of an emotional space. And so we knew immediately that we needed to feature real people with real stories. We needed to have ethnography. so that we could see people, to make a connection with that data, and to make the issue real for people. We needed to create dimension, to create a humanizing quality to the quantitative data, in part to make it less arguable, to help people create a more empathetic, natural connection that derives from themselves. And so we needed to put people at the front and center. So we do the large scale quant, we have the big headlines, big striking statistics, and then we did the ethnography to collect the stories, the artifacts, quotes, to really help dimensionalize that data and make it real. We featured the video, which featured 16 real folks across the country, along with a data dashboard, all of the public reports. And so we have this really well-built, both rational and this emotional perspective. The white paper has been distributed to more than 1,000 members of the media. The dashboard has been accessed over 3,000 times by academics and federal policy wonks. And there was a public release supported by 32 market satellite tour, which put that in and of itself in front of over 150 million Americans. And so this was a very big campaign. Ultimately, the federal government hasn't taken action themselves, but Amazon was able to demonstrate the support, and they called upon other large retailers and other states to increase wages on their own. And to date, 31, after the study has been published, 31 states and the District of Columbia have created graduated paths to increasing the minimum wage, and many are on the path for a $15 minimum wage in the next few years. And so the impact of hearing these real stories from real people has had a true and meaningful influence on policy across the United States, so much that it has raised the median household income by 5% within the past 3 years since its release.
That's so incredible, Tessa. Really a great example of impact. I'd love to know from you, was there a moment in the research, or was there something about a specific story where you thought, oh wow, okay, this is going to make the difference. This is going to move people to act differently?
Yeah, it was really the simplicity of it all. It was the human stories that were recalled and repeated, not the statistics. As you said in your opening, people remember stories, not data. And even though I'm a qualitative researcher, ethnographer, I was moved by the stories that people repeated back. And I realized, wow, this is very powerful. One of them being a woman who declares that she's had to use a food bank, and she doesn't look anything like what we would think a woman or a person who has, frequented a food bank. Many of us have never heard anybody say these things, especially from somebody who feels even, remotely relatable, like we can see ourselves in this person. Another person says, I can save money now, and she really means it. Right, and she's talking about an increase from $12 to $15 an hour. And so you think, wow, that is really, truly meaningful in your life. And we want that for other people. We want that for ourselves. So it's very easy for us to create empathy when we have that relatable goal or perspective in life about wanting to do better for ourselves. And the most striking one, because it was the most simple, was one gentleman who said, earning more money has allowed me to have a hobby. And he says it so innocently. It's just a hobby. It's something so simple that most people have known the joy of. And it hits so hard of the improvement of just like a hobby. Like imagine something so simple. It's so relatable. And these are the types of stories that were unable to be unheard, unable to be unfelt. And this really kind of pushed that data over the line.
That's a great example and so relatable and so touching. Amanda, I know you do a ton of work with people in real life all the time. I'd love to hear an example from you of one story that had a big impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So mine takes us down an innovation path that I was walking with a client. I was working with a beauty client, and they were all about learning about unmet needs. And so we were going off into immersions. And so I remember being in a New York City apartment. So we're all crammed in here, sitting on the floor of, this woman, Shannon's apartment, and I'm just listening to her. She's had a baby about 6 months ago, and she's sitting on her bed. She's just shown us all of the products that she's been using and that she used to use. And she's lamenting how much has changed for her body. Her hair was falling out. She had bags under her eyes. She was tired. She just didn't feel like herself anymore. And she's saying it, and there's tears in her eyes, and we're all feeling it, holding back, or even, tears in our eyes as I'm sitting there and I'm listening to her. And I'm letting her share, and I'm letting her get it all out. And, I knew this is kind of like the beauty of being a human moderator here, kind of jumping a little bit to where you're headed. Being a human moderator, right? Like, I know when to lean in. I know when to ask her a question to go a little bit deeper. I know when to take a step back and just let her breathe, because I see that she needs a minute to get her thought out. And so we're sitting there, and the client team is kind of silent. They're also, I think they're sitting on like a bed. One of them's on the floor in front of the closet. So we're all just kind of huddled in there listening. And then we heard the line that we couldn't, as Tessa said, we couldn't unhear and we couldn't unfeel, when she said, "I wish there was something that could help me feel like me again." And this quote hit the clients hard, right? If we're thinking about the space of unmet needs, like, that's what she needs. There it is. And so we're in this innovation stream, and that is the line that they kept repeating back as we're on calls, as we're in workshops, later as they're going into creative brief development. It was there again. It's these powerful human moments that say so much to us in just a few words.
Yes, I love that. It's just like, the ability to kind of like peel back the onion a little bit and go a little bit deeper to get to that really high level insight, right? I wish I could feel like me again. That's a really pivotal moment, I'm sure, and something that AI could never get for you, right? But I'd love to actually pivot to that topic of AI, because we know that AI is a really important tool that's impacted what we do every day. And I know it's on everybody's mind. So I'd love, Karen, for you to share the incredible research that we've done. We've done a lot of research on research. We've looked at a moderator bot versus a real human. We did a digital twin experiment where we created synthetic respondents and looked at the difference between the real and synthetic respondents. And I'd love, Karen, for you to share a little bit of background on that and tell the team what we learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say like we in qualitative are in a unique position when it comes to generative AI, because when we talk about the LLMs or large language models, they work off of words. And in qualitative, we have a lot of words. So we really jumped in there and started using them right away and saying, how can we exploit the power of this? But at the same time, arguably, qualitative is the most human of research disciplines. So we definitely felt a responsibility to make sure that we were doing the right research on research and doing the series of experiments that help us to understand kind of what are humans best at and where can AI help us. And so as you said, Heather, we've done a series of experiments. I'll mention a few of them today, and then they're ongoing, so you'll continue to hear from us as we continue to learn. The first one I'll talk about is the moderator bot experiment. So you mentioned, so we did some research with the moderator bot, interviewed the people who spoke to the moderator bot, observed the interactions, and what we found is that the moderator bot today can follow a simple discussion guide. And what we say is it follows the guide, not the gut. So as you heard Amanda talk about how she moderates, she said, I knew when to take a moment and let her breathe. I knew when the moment had to breathe. Also, what a human moderator will do is kind of pick up on a little crumb of the story and then keep investigating. They know where to dig because they have that intuition. AI does not have intuition. Again, it's following the guide, not the gut. So there are some applications for that. For example, if you're doing like a large-based quantitative study and you wanted to add a little bit of additional context to it, there could be an application there. But when it comes to what we're talking about today, which is eliciting human-centric stories, it's not really where I would recommend that we use a moderator bot with today's technology. So that's the first one, is the moderator bot experiment. The next application I'll talk about is synthetic respondents, or AI as the respondent. And for that, we did the digital twin experiment that you mentioned. So the way that worked is took a community in Japan. took the real humans in the community and did research with them in order to build AI twins for each human in the community. Then did research with both the AI digital twins and the actual humans so that we could compare and contrast the findings and sort of figure out who was good at what. There were some things that the AI digital twins did pretty well. So for example, ideation is one of them. We still recommend that there's a role for a human in ideation to give that social and emotional context, but that's probably a topic for a different webinar since we're not really talking about ideation today. So again, if I go back to what we're talking about today, which is human-centric storytelling and foundational understanding that gets you there, that's where the synthetic respondents tend to fall short. And the reason for that is the synthetic respondent, or AI in this case, can theme, and it can come up with kind of a story that's like a little bit like a line drawing. It's kind of, we say it goes to the central tendency. It's going to give you something that's sort of very like the masses and not with a lot of ton of details. In contrast, the human respondents gave very personal, detailed stories. And if you think about it, when you create an AI digital twin, no matter how good of a job you do, it's not like a science fiction movie where you can like download the entire contents of your brain and experiences into that digital twin. It's working off of the data that it has. So it is kind of going towards that central tendency, and it's not going to give the details. It's not going to give the real human experiences that the human respondent does. So for that reason, when we talk about doing the foundational understanding that is going to lead you to those human truths, to the human storytelling, I like to say there is no substitute for human to human research in that context. But all of that said, so I'm our generative AI champion, and I realize there's a lot it can do for us. And so it leads me to kind of the third application, which is using AI as a tool. And this is where I think we're really starting to see it shine. Again, we've done experiments here. You know, one of the ones that we did was looking at how well it can summarize research from transcripts. And we found that it does a pretty good job of that. It's not something that we would ever hand directly over to a client. It's actually one of our policies. We always have a human review anything. But the reason for that is the output that it gives is kind of like if someone had just left college, they're smart, they're promising, but they don't have all the experiences, all the intuition. Remember, it's not going to pick up on all the social emotional context that a human does. So it's a great tool for the human moderator. And Amanda, I know you are someone who has kind of embraced it as a tool. So maybe you could speak to that a little more specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. AI has become what I like to refer to as my moderator buddy, right? Like it's something that can help me in my everyday. And so, you know, thanks to a lot of the research platforms that we're using now, we have really high quality transcripts when we come out of sessions. And so I have honestly really stopped taking notes while I'm moderating, which has been so great because I can now really lean in even more to the discussion. I don't have part of my brain thinking about, oh, I need to jot down that quote or make sure I don't miss that point. So I can really just be there and be listening. And my notes now are instead like a little bullet, a hint at a quote, a hint at a point that I want to make sure that I don't forget. And so I come out, you know, end of the day, I can quickly download all of my transcripts and I can load them into our AI tool, Ipsos Facto, and pull together a quick summary. Like you were saying, AI can be used for pulling summaries, and that's kind of the beauty of it, or finding those great quotes. And those summaries are a gut check for me. It's making sure that I didn't miss anything, that, you know, as I'm capturing all of my learnings from the study, there's, you know, nothing that I didn't think of. I'm like, oh yeah, that was a great point. I want to make sure that I bring that in. Or, oh yeah, that was a great quote. I don't want to forget that. So with the help of AI being able to pull those quick summaries, I get to spend more time really crafting the story, thinking about the implications, and enabling me to turn around really quick, impactful reports for clients, which has been just a huge help.
Yeah, I love that because it also kind of shows how AI enables us as human researchers to elevate our contributions and kind of operate on a higher level. The other thing I would add, that another way that we're using AI when it comes to storytelling is to bring the story to life. So not as much in discovering the story, because we talked about some of the pitfalls there, but once you know what the story is, how do you bring it to life? So things like personas, creating AI personas or persona bots, storytelling prompts. So we have a training that we've used to train everyone in our organization on the arc of storytelling and how to tell a story. And we are working on translating some of that into prompts that can be used as you're creating those summaries and things like that. The third thing I'd mention is we're playing around with new tools. We're using things, of course, like creating AI-generated images where appropriate when it can help us to tell the story. And there are also some tools that enable us to use text prompts to create videos to help tell the story. So as new tools are coming out, the great thing is as we're able to use them in our secure environment, we're able to bring them into our toolbox and use them as new and kind of dynamic ways to tell the story.
That's fantastic, and I love that we're embracing all of these tools and using them to allow us to elevate the impact and the insights at the end. Tessa, we haven't heard from you yet, and I'd love to hear from you. As an ethnographer, what do you think of the importance of the human in storytelling, and can we just use AI to create the full narrative?
No. I think AI, no, not if we want them to be truly powerful, right? AI is a tool. It can do a lot of things with a capital T. It can do a lot of tasks, but AI did not grow up in society. It doesn't have its own origin. It doesn't have its own culture or community or gender or sexuality, all of these things that shape our identity and how we move through the world. It doesn't experience discomfort, anxiety, or pressure, joy, love, all of these core fundamental emotions that sit, deeply within us. It doesn't have a family or personal history. It doesn't have hobbies. It doesn't have financial goals. It's never been to a food bank. It doesn't have an ego, and it doesn't have memories. And so, it doesn't have this sort of trauma of moving through life. It doesn't want to fit in. It doesn't feel shame or embarrassment. It doesn't want to be good enough or seek validation. It doesn't have experiences that give it these deep-seated desires that move it to act. And it doesn't grieve, and it doesn't feel sadness. And you think about these two emotions, they're so deeply human. They kind of don't have a function other than letting us know that we're alive, and it doesn't do those things. It doesn't suffer. It doesn't look up at the night sky and wonder, what it means to be alive and if God exists or if we're alone in the universe. It doesn't do any of these things that define our experience as human beings. And so this is where we operate. And so understanding this, beautiful, complicated, tortuous essence of what drives
transformative,
relevant projects. It's not going to have something fall off the wall during a presentation and try to recover immediately. And these telling of stories is really fundamental, to the human experience. And so if you think about, I've been buzzed out as an idea about early humans, if you think about us as early people sitting around a fire, we're sharing, we're being together, we're learning about values, ourselves, others, life, existence. We're learning how to be. And there's this true power in the story's ability to impact us. And this shouldn't be overlooked. I think it's one of the most valuable tools that we have. We have a lot of tools. We have AI, we have everything, but it still doesn't really get us that much closer to really, truly understanding each other. And in some ways, it can create more distance. When we're thinking about qual, it puts us in front of people at the source. It's not filtered through or processed through a platform or a tool. We hear it one-on-one. And I also think that there may be this urge to overlook qualitative or stories because maybe they feel a bit low tech, or they're not associated with a tool or a platform or statistical modeling or something really cool and neat like biometrics. But this is our most original foundational tool. Understanding human behavior and inspiration is what causes us to care and to connect, and this is truly powerful.
I think that's so true, and it's actually a great segue, I think, into our last topic, which is storytelling for relevancy and impact. So I think everyone probably logged in believes in the power of the human and the power of the individual story, but I think a lot of people may question the role and the impact of qualitative as a small base size, very human-centric research, and looking for that needle in the haystack and exploring that story. How do we know we're truly driving impact and broad relevancy for all versus just kind of creating a story that's nice to have? And so I'd love for you guys to think about that and give me your thoughts on that. Amanda, did you want to start with us?
Sure, absolutely. I love that question, Heather. And it reminds me of a recent project that I did that was about some early stage creative. So, you know, the beauty here is that we were starting with qual. We were starting with there was a big idea and then a couple executions that kind of were starting to bring to life this idea for consumers. And it just wasn't landing with the consumers in the room. And given the years that I've worked on the brand, given the conversations that I've had with the brand and the agency and my knowledge of the creative brief, I was able to ask questions that weren't in the guide. I was able to listen for those nuggets of truth and, you know, what the story needed to be. One of the things that I love about qual and talking to people is that, you know, you can see when there's actual passion. You can see when there's actual excitement from someone. And as a, you know, a human moderator, I can dig into that. I can find those needles in the haystack. I can see that somebody's face really lit up when we were saying this particular phrase and dig in like, hey, what was going on there? I noticed that you kind of smiled or you laughed to yourself as, you know, we were talking about this, like what was going on there, and start unpacking that with them so that we can understand kind of, you know, while the execution wasn't landing, what are the elements? You know, what is the real insight there? What is the truth that the agency and the team can take and start optimizing and iterating and getting to that next best thing? So, you know, we finished these groups. The report was due in 36 hours after we finished research, as I'm sure a lot of people have felt, right? You're moving fast into that next stage of creative development. And so thanks to my experience with the team, thanks to so many, I know Karen already alluded to a lot of the tools that we have. We've got a lot of storytelling templates that we can use as moderators. We've got power pages that we can use. I already had kind of a structure in place that I could immediately start getting my story down. And I could take those gems, those nuggets of truth that we heard from the consumers and quickly turn around a story for the client team so that they could hit the ground running and make those changes that they needed to make and to take those steps that they needed to do. So being able to really bridge that gap of, you know, what we heard from the consumers and what the business needs were, and get that story that would help them to pivot and have some real impact.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And Karen, I'd love to call on you. I know Karen and I both worked client side as well for years before joining Ipsos. And so I know that this is something that's near and dear to you. I'd love to hear from you too on relevancy and impact of small base size.
Yeah, and it's a question I heard a lot on the client side. And maybe since Amanda gave a creative example, I'll give more of an innovation example. Because one of the things I did on the client side was work for 5 years in FEI and disruptive innovation. And so what I can say is a lot of times those disruptive innovations started with that kernel of insight that came from the small base size human to human research. Oftentimes it was from someone on what we might call like the vibrant fringes, not in that mass, you know, mainstream, somebody a little bit out of the mainstream, someone who is using the product differently, perhaps. Sometimes it came from an observation. You know, we talked about some of the examples of, you know, something we actually heard someone say, but sometimes it's an observation. We see somebody do something different, especially with innovators, and they're like, wow, that's a compensating behavior. Why are they doing that? And it leads you down a whole interesting path. So that's the initial spark, but then that just kind of kicks off the learning plan. So that what I'd say in terms of how we manage that question about a small base size is it's just the first step, and we're going to keep learning. And I'm a big fan of iterative learning as you're developing something. So maybe you start to develop the first bit of it, you show it to consumers or patients or doctors or whoever you're developing this for. And then you iterate, you develop something a little bit different, show them the next version, and you need to keep showing them what you're developing, because the end person using your product or seeing your commercial, they don't see the idea. They don't see the strategy. They don't see the insight that sparked it. They see the thing that you created from that. And so you have to make sure that thing is true to, you know, the original insight and what people really need in their lives. So iteratively learning as you go. And then as you get closer to market, eventually that learning is going to extend to a bigger base size. You're going to do something that is more quantitative. And that's the way, in my opinion, that you can manage the risk of launching something that's big and important and maybe costs a lot of money while not losing the inspiration, that spark that came from that initial qualitative insight that you got, maybe that moment on the floor or that moment in the home or that moment in the store.
Yeah, super helpful. I really appreciate that perspective. All right, ladies, that closes our 3 topics. But before we move to Q&A, and I think we've got a couple of questions, I wanted to ask you each for one final closing thought. So in this new world of HI and AI and storytelling, fill in the blank as we look forward. 2025 is the year of blank, or what's your prediction for what's next?
I'm going to say the year of the person. I think we back to the basics, back to our foundations, back to the roots, back to interpersonal communication, storytelling. I think back to the person, back to the basics.
I'm going to piggyback on Tessa, and I'm going to say the return of in-person. I know I've seen, just as 2024 has gone on, there's more and more in-person work, and to the back half of this year, I'm mostly back to in-person research now. So kind of the swing from online to in-person, and I just see 2025 really hitting the ground running with that, and being back with people.
Yeah, I'm going to say, continuing on my thread of talking about the role of generative AI, that 2025 is going to be the year of HI plus AI together. HI being the human intelligence along with AI. I think 2024, did I say 2025? That's looking ahead. 2024, looking backwards, I think we all just jumped into what can we do with generative AI. So maybe I'd call that the year of generative AI. But now that we're learning what it can do and where we still need a human, I think 2025 is going to be the year of that partnership.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So important to leverage the best of both worlds, being bilingual, AI and HI, as we like to say. So awesome, ladies. Well, that is a wrap. We have a couple of questions. It looks like we do have time. So question 1, and just shout out whoever wants to answer. How can we leverage the power of storytelling to foster deeper empathy and understanding in an increasingly polarized world?
I'll say that first, I will always argue that we are never as polarized as we seem. Over the years, I've been doing work now on polarization. And everybody describes, what they want using the same words and the same concepts. We want success, safety, community. We're all using the same words. Now, how that, manifests itself becomes, sort of the devil's in the details there. But I think that the fascinating part is that we are all connected to the same concepts, to the same words. And I think this is hugely important. So how can we leverage the power of storytelling? I think that we have to learn from one another. We have to hear from people. I think we have to remove ourselves from the sort of drama of the online discourse, of the echo chambers, of the comment section, away from these tools of isolation and polarization that remove us from direct and compassionate connection with one another. That kind of want us to be bad to one another, that dehumanize others and truly make us dysfunctional. I think that we have to believe that there is value in talking to people, and hearing their stories and being moved by other people and their stories, and try to regain some balance by being in communication and in community. I think, again, I'm too into my fire idea, my pet idea, as Karen calls it, that when we're in nature, our least adulterated versions of ourselves, we have our original tool, again, communication and connection with one another. This is healing. We can sit around, we can talk, we can learn about values, we can learn about each other in life. But in nature, we can't, consume 100, 200 stories in 2 seconds that really want to pit us against one another and make us believe and act out this sort of kind of morbid fantasy that we hate each other. And then it becomes a reality, right? But I think that if we can kind of parse some of that back and focus on the deep human truths that we all really kind of want the same things, and kind of relearn or learn how to hear where people are coming from, we might learn that we have a lot more in common if we can just kind of let that commonality shine through instead of the polarization.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's an idea for another topic for another time, uncovering universal human truths in research. I think that there's something really powerful there. Awesome, thanks so much. We'll move to another question. Karen, I think this one's probably for you. What are the ethical considerations of using AI to personalize narratives, and how can we ensure that these technologies are used responsibly?
That's a great question, and it's one that's really important to us. So responsible AI is something that all of our employees who use our AI ipso facto have to do training on, and it's something that we do regular training on. In fact, you guys probably remember that we did something at our last team meeting where we revisited responsible AI and, you know, kind of delved into a scenario and said what's right here and what's wrong here. So it's very important to us. And we have a certification program too, where we have everybody go through, they learn about, you know, our frameworks, some things like truth, transparency, and trust, the need for a human to always sort of check the data to make sure that it is, you know, not representative, it is accurate, it's doing the right things. And I think actually as of yesterday within our US qualitative team, I think we have 94 or 95 people who completed their certification, which is awesome. But then I think overall as a principle, I like to think about, so you said, you know, what are the ethics of using it to, you know, represent the narrative? Think about what it is and what it is not. So I think when you think about it as a representation or like a portrait, you know, a persona or something, it's a description of the data that it has taken in. So it's not always going to have everything included. So we talk about like the vibrant fringes and some of those behaviors that are maybe a little bit outside the mainstream. Those might not be in the data set, or they might not be noted by the analysis that's done there. So you have to remember that, and you have to think, okay, well, if this is going to give me something that's more in the middle of the road, do I need to augment it with maybe some immersive work or some looking outside to make sure I'm representing the kind of the full range of voices? So again, I think if you think about what it is and what it is not, we also talked about the data it takes in. So, you know, if the data set that is taken in is biased or lacking, that's just something that you have to consider. And that's also one of the reasons when I was talking about our certification, I was mentioning one of the things that we train people on is always have a human review the output. So when the human is reviewing the output, you can have that lens on of remembering what is the data set it's working with, what is lacking, where might I need to delve into these results to make sure that it's not missing something or misrepresenting something. So again, it's kind of an ongoing, I think, commitment that we have to make sure that we are using it responsibly. And I think that does start with kind of thinking about what it is and what it is not.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Ladies, I think we're about at time. Thank you so much for all of your perspective and your incredible insights. I think you shared really powerful methodologies and tools that we have to help all of our clients listening create those powerful narratives, you know, whether it's in-depth one-on-ones, in-homes, immersions, ethnography, you know, storytelling, reports, and deliverables. Those are all the things that can help us elevate and socialize insights for impact. So thank you so much for sharing. If you're still listening, I'd love to plug our next webinar. It is December 4th, so be on the lookout for that. It's how we accelerate with generative AI, so we'll continue on this theme. And we're gonna have some great client stories that we're sharing about generative AI and the positive impact it can have on the business. So look forward to seeing you guys next time. And Ellen, that's we're a wrap from our end if you want to close us out.
Wow, I just really want to thank you, Heather and Karen, Amanda and Tessa, for today's really informative and deep dive presentation and discussion. Thank you all for joining us. Do be on the lookout for an email to today's recorded presentation to revisit and share. That should come in the next few days. But in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to the team here if you have any follow-up questions. That now concludes today's amazing webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.